Hi, it's Adriana from First Congregational Church in Long Beach. And in this presentation, I will be explaining to you some common online phishing scams and how to avoid them. And I'll be explaining a little bit about the mechanics of these phishing scams. So I received this fake email from Reverend Elena, but I already knew it was fake. How did I know? Let's go through that. And at the top here is a video that I will link to in the description and also on the presentation that goes over how to recognize fake emails. But let me tell you how I knew. The first is communication. Reverend Elena had told me months ago that she was no longer using Gmail. So, how was she going to be contacting me via email from a Gmail account? So, communication, when you switch your phone number, when you switch your email address, tell your contacts so that they will always recognize you by your most updated, most current contact information. And that will decrease the chance that someone will be able to fool them with old information. If they know that you're now on Gmail, they're going to be suspicious if someone pretends to be you using Yahoo, for example. Okay, the second is flat out wrong information. So at the bottom of the screen down here, I have the Gmail address that Reverend Elena no longer uses, but it's the one she used to use. And you can see her photo, let me point to it right there, is different from the photo that is in the email. The photo that was in the email of Reverend Elena was like a super old photo. So, in addition, the actual Gmail address that she used to use isn't the one being used here. It's a Gmail address and it has Elena Larssen, First Church LB in it, but it's not the Gmail address that she used to use. So the actual information was wrong. The third thing is solicitation. As you can see in this email, it's a perfunctory, hi, how are you? And then it's asking me, oh, I need your assistance, please. They want to see if you're going to respond. When Reverend Elena needs something from me, she calls me or she texts me on my mobile or she chats with me on Microsoft Teams. If the person is contacting you in a way for help, in a way that they don't typically contact you for help, you ought to be suspicious. Yeah, maybe they do regularly email you, but when they need something, do they typically call you or text you? If so, you need to be suspicious of an email where they're all of a sudden coming at you asking for something when that's not typically how they approach you when they ask for something. And then the last one is a pretty easy one, capitalization. Reverend Elena knows how to write. The whole sentence, each word in the sentence in this email is capitalized. So that's a hint that the person that wrote it, A, does not have English as their first language, and B, is not Reverend Elena. So those are the ways that I knew that it was a fake email. And here in this video, as I stated, are going to be some other ways that you can recognize that an email is fake. But the first thing is the most important. You need to communicate with your contacts to make sure that they have your most updated information. That way, someone can't use a fake email address or an old email address that you don't use anymore to try to fool your contacts. A lot of you may say, yes, I already know how to recognize a, a scam, a phishing expedition on email. But what I want you to realize is not only email where these phishing expeditions are taking place. On the far left here of this, or the far side of the screen, I don't know if it's going to be your left or right, I have 3 videos that you might want to check out regarding other ways that phishing is taking place. Phishing is taking place via social media. Phishing is taking place via telephone calls. Phishing is taking place via text message. And this is happening to members of our church. This is a screenshot from a post by Karen Miller. Karen Miller does not use Instagram. Somebody went on Instagram and made up with her picture an Instagram account pretending to be Karen Miller and is soliciting people on Instagram to get money from them while pretending to be Karen Miller. And the same thing is happening to our co-congregant, Dottie Wine. So I just want you to be aware that right here in our own church, phishing is taking place using methods other than email. Social media and telephone calls and text messages are three common ways that phishing scams are taking place. So be aware of those in addition to being aware of email scams. So, how did the scammers know enough about Reverend Larssen's contacts to start soliciting people from church with the fake email? And how did uh, the scammers know enough about Karen Miller and Dottie Wine's contacts to make a fake account for them on Instagram and start soliciting people from church on Instagram with fraudulent requests for money? The answer is Facebook. You can go onto YouTube right now and see plenty of video tutorials, good ones, on how to scrape email addresses from Facebook groups. It's really not that hard if you take the time to watch these videos. So that does not necessarily mean that these videos are giving illegal information or shouldn't be there. There are legitimate reasons why a legitimate business with a marketing department or a marketer might use the tutorials I showed you on the last slide to scrape email addresses from Facebook groups. Nothing nefarious about it. Let me give you an example. A florist wants to tell brides to be about a special that the florist is having on wedding arrangements. So the florist goes onto Facebook and goes onto a bunch of groups that have to do with planning your wedding, wedding planning, brides R Us, whatever, right? And uses those tutorials from YouTube to scrape the email addresses of the people that belong to the group. Then the florist sends those emails an advertisement saying, "Hi, I'm a florist. I do wedding arrangements. I'm having a special. Come check me out." That is a completely non-nefarious and legitimate use of scraping emails from Facebook groups. The florist is actually sending relevant information to a target audience that would be interested in that information because brides do order from florists. And the business is just using the scrape from the Facebook groups to get the email addresses of those target audiences. So just because someone is scraping from a Facebook group does not automatically mean that they're doing something nefarious. But the way I described here is not the way that scammers are using it. Let me explain to you how scammers are using it. So, how are scammers using the scraping of email addresses from Facebook groups? So, first, they go onto the Facebook groups and they use the tools that were explained in the tutorials I showed you from YouTube or wherever to scrape the email addresses. Then they use phishing techniques to try to gain access to the passwords of the email addresses that they scraped. And if they are able to get access to your password, then they log in as you and they send their fraudulent solicitation email to all your contacts, in addition to sending them to the email addresses from the groups to which you belong. But let's say that they're not able to get your password to your email. That's okay. They just do what those fakers did on the Reverend Elena email. They make up an address that sounds like it's from you, and then they send it to the people in the Facebook groups of which you are a part, whose addresses they scraped. They may not send it to all your contacts because they weren't able to get into your email address and get all your contacts, but they'll send it to the email addresses in the Facebook group. Now, it only takes one click for the scammers to match up the email addresses that they scraped from the Facebook groups to people who have Instagram accounts. Remember, Facebook owns Instagram, Facebook owns WhatsApp. So then they find the people in the groups that don't have an Instagram account. And they do what they did to Karen Miller and Dottie Wine. They make fake accounts pretending to be that person, and they go and they look at, okay, Karen Miller's in the First Church group. So I'm going to go over here to Instagram and I'm going to pretend to be Karen Miller, and I'm going to contact all the people on Instagram who are part of the Facebook group because they'll recognize Karen Miller's name. So that is how they do it. And it's pretty sophisticated. You know, when you get scammed or your group gets scammed, it's kind of a natural instinct to feel like, why did they do this to me? Why did they do this to my group? And what I want you to understand is that this picture at the top that represents an individual scammer going into Facebook groups and scraping emails, that is so inaccurate. It is completely automated. They're using the same sophisticated software and computer servers used by legitimate marketers. These scammers are not individuals. They're not even local gangs in New Delhi or, in some city in Nigeria. It's not even that. These are organized crime syndicates. The reason they can do the telephone scams is because they have call centers. And our group, First Congregational Church of Long Beach Group, is just one of tens of thousands of groups from which they scraped emails. Then they used those phishing techniques on all of the emails from all of the groups that they got emails from, knowing that a small percentage, maybe even 0.5%, or maybe even 0.05%, maybe even 0.02%, were going to fall for it. Well, when you're soaking up hundreds of thousands of emails, and you're asking everybody for $20 or whatever the amount is, you typically more than that, right? Because you pretend like the person's in distress and they need hundreds of dollars to get us whatever. That is still going to be a lucrative business. So don't feel like, oh, what did Reverend Elena do wrong? Or, oh, what did Dottie Wine do wrong? Or, oh, they didn't do anything wrong. This is a sophisticated uh, uh, organized crime situation. And the people at fault are the people at Facebook, because there is a lot Facebook could be doing to protect their groups and their members from this type of thing, but it butts up against their bottom line, because the more data they have about you, the better they are to sell advertising, and they don't want to give that up. So just remember, it's not you, and it's not individuals, it's basically organized crime syndicates. Okay, so I've explained how these phishing scams work. I've given you some examples of how you can spot a phishing scam, and then I've given you some resources for more videos you can watch with more information. And in an upcoming video, I am going to explain how you can avoid being used for a phishing scam. I don't want you to be the Reverend Elena or the Karen Miller or the Dottie Wine. So there's some ways to avoid that, and I'm going to go over them in detail in an upcoming video. So please subscribe so that you'll get a notification when that video comes out. But just off the top, the first thing is to enable two-step verification. The second thing is to use a password manager. And the third thing, and not everybody tells you this, this is my own thing that I really think is effective. The third thing is using audio texting or other, yeah, you know it's me methods. Now, I am going to, as you can see, I'm using PowerPoint presentation slides. I'm going to put the PowerPoint presentation link in the description of this video. And when you click on it, you're going to be able to click the links in the presentation that take you to the additional resources that I hope you found this video helpful. And even if you knew all the tips already, I'm sure you know a few people who would benefit from this knowledge. So please do share the video. And you can also follow me on Twitter, where I talk mostly about politics and culture and personal things. But you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel in order to get updates when I post videos, especially that next one on how to avoid being used in a phishing scam. Thank you so much for watching.